It was a chilly, quiet Saturday night not long after the ink had dried on the divorce documents. Over 20 years of shared life had unraveled in a few swift strokes of a pen, and now I was left trying to adjust to the hollow echo of a home that had once been filled with weekend laughter and familiar patterns. One tradition lingered like a stubborn memory: our weekly visits to the mineral spa. It had always been a place of comfort where my husband, my son Ethan, and I could unwind, tucked into the warm mist and hushed serenity of that sacred space. After the split, it was Ethan who urged we keep going, just the two of us. I hesitated at first. The idea of carrying on with something so deeply tied to our now fragmented family felt painful. But Ethan wouldn't let it go. His voice was light, but there was a quiet insistence beneath it. "It doesn't all have to fall apart, Mom," he said. "Some things can stay the same." And so, that night, we packed our towels and robes and drove through the softly falling snow to the spa on the edge of Boulder. The parking lot was nearly empty. Winter always thinned the crowd. And as we stepped inside, the scent of eucalyptus and cedar wrapped around me like a long-lost embrace. I hadn't felt that kind of warmth in months, not just on my skin, but deeper, like something inside me had been waiting to exhale. Ethan, now 22, had grown into someone new. The boy who used to cannonball into the shallow pool was gone, replaced by a calm, confident man with the same gentle eyes that used to light up at bedtime stories. He had his father's build, broad and steady, but his presence was uniquely his own, a quiet strength that surprised me sometimes. We chose one of the small private steam rooms, the kind with smooth wooden benches and soft ambient light. It was just big enough to feel close, but not cramped. Wrapped in towels, we settled in side by side. The steam began to rise, filling the air with heat and stillness. "You seem lighter," Ethan said after a while, his voice soft, like he wasn't sure if he should speak. I turned to look at him, eyebrows raised. "Since when?" He shrugged, eyes flicking to mine before glancing away. "Since everything, I guess." I let the question hang in the air for a beat. "Maybe not better," I said slowly, "but I'm learning to breathe again." He nodded, his expression softening. "That counts." We fell into a comfortable silence then, broken only by the quiet hiss of steam and the occasional creak of the wood beneath us. For the first time in a long while, I felt a strange kind of peace, the kind that doesn't ask for answers, just your presence. Ethan leaned back against the warm cedar wall, his eyes closed for a moment. I watched him in the gentle light and thought about how much he'd grown, not just physically, but in the way he carried himself. Steady. A grounding force when my own strength wavered. "You remember when we used to come here and you'd beg to stay in the sauna until your fingers turned to raisins?" I asked, smiling at the memory. He laughed, a full sound that reverberated through the room. "And Dad would yank me out after 10 minutes, saying I'd boil my brain. Or maybe he just couldn't take the heat," I added, chuckling with him. Strangely, the mention of my ex didn't sting this time. We spent the next hour drifting between the steam room, the plunge pool, and the quiet lounge, reminiscing about the old days. The conversation flowed easily, and I realized how our relationship had changed. He wasn't just my son anymore. He was someone I leaned on, someone who understood without needing words. Later, we sat in a tucked-away corner of the lounge, sipping peppermint tea. Ethan reached over, resting his hand gently on mine. His touch was light, but steady. "You're going to be okay, you know," he said, his voice steady. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes, not from sadness, but from the quiet conviction in his words. "You think so?" I whispered. "I know so," he replied. And for the first time in what felt like ages, I believed it. As the weeks passed, our Saturday evenings at the spa became a new kind of ritual. Amid a life that had been turned upside down, they were a safe place, a balm for the rawness of everything outside. In that cocoon of steam and silence, we didn't have to say much. The shared space was enough. And somewhere between the third and fourth visit, I realized that I wasn't just coming here for the rest and relaxation. I was coming for Ethan, for the connection, for the way he made me feel seen again. That night, he was already waiting outside the steam room when I arrived, towel slung over his shoulder, the edges of his smile crinkling his eyes. I smiled back, something warm stirring inside me at the sight. Late again, Ethan teased, opening the door to the private steam room with a knowing grin. I nudged past him with a smirk. I'm the one who drives us here, remember? So if I'm late, you're late too. He laughed, the sound warm and familiar, echoing softly through the wooden chamber as we took our seats on the smooth benches. The steam was already rising in thick white spirals, softening the edges of the dim room until everything felt dreamlike and slow. Ethan leaned back, resting his head against the cedar wall, and I let myself look at him for a moment. Not in a way that broke any lines, just noticing the shape of who he had become. The way his shoulders seemed to fill the space beside me now. The stillness in him that wasn't childhood anymore, but something steadier. You okay? He asked, catching me mid-thought. His expression softened the way it always did when he worried. Gentle, patient, the same look that had helped anchor me through so many fragile evenings since the divorce. I brushed a damp strand of hair from my cheek. Yeah, just thinking. About what? I hesitated only a moment. About how much I've come to appreciate these nights with you. They mean more than you know. His smile shifted, open, sincere, unguarded. Yeah, he said quietly. They mean a lot to me too. The air between us thickened, not with discomfort, but with something unspoken. A tenderness, maybe. A truth we hadn't named yet. As we moved between the warm rooms and the cold plunge, I found myself noticing the small things. The way his hand paused when he passed me a towel. The way his gaze lingered half a second longer than chance. The way my chest tightened with something I didn't have a word for. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just healing. Maybe connection feels different when you've lost something. But the feeling stayed. By the time the next Saturday came, I felt a quiet anticipation I couldn't easily dismiss. Not excitement exactly. Something deeper, gentler. A warmth I hadn't felt in years. And Ethan felt it too. I could see it in the easy brightness of his smile as we walked through the snow toward the spa, in the way our steps synced without trying. We settled into the steam again, wrapped in the familiar heat. We talked more than usual that night, about childhood memories, about work, about the future. His voice held a confidence that made something inside me swell with pride. You're incredible, you know that? I said suddenly, the words slipping out before I could second-guess them. He blinked, startled, but not dismissive. Mom. No, really, I continued. You're thoughtful. You're strong. You care in ways most people don't. I don't think I tell you that enough. His gaze met mine, steady, clear. You're stronger than you realize, he said. You've been through so much and you're still here. Still showing up. I admire that. A lot. Something inside me fluttered. Not dramatic, just a quiet shift in the room. Later, wrapped in soft robes, tea warming our hands, we sat together in the lounge, the world muted into gentle shadows. I don't think I've ever felt closer to you than I do right now, he said, almost in a whisper. I looked at him, really looked. He didn't say it lightly. He meant every word. These weeks, they've been hard, he continued. But they've also made something clear. I'm seeing you, not just as my mom, but as a person. Someone I really admire. Someone I want to understand. I didn't know how to answer. All I knew was that something between us had shifted, quietly but unmistakably, not crossing any boundaries, but altering the edges of how we saw each other. By the following Saturday, that awareness was still there, soft, warm, waiting. When Ethan greeted me at the entrance, his smile was gentler, his eyes lingering just a moment longer than before. There was something different in the way Ethan greeted me that following Saturday. His smile lingered a little longer than usual, his eyes warm in a way that made something inside me shift. I told myself it was simply the new closeness we had formed, two people rebuilding a rhythm in the quiet aftermath of change. But there was an energy between us now, subtle but unmistakable. At the spa, We followed our familiar pattern. The heat of the steam room, the cold plunge, the soft dimness of the lounge. But Ethan seemed quieter, thoughtful in a way I couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't until we sat down with steaming cups of herbal tea that he finally spoke. "Hey," he said lightly, though something in his tone carried weight. "Have you ever gotten a massage here?" I blinked, caught off guard. "No, actually." "I haven't." He shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Just thought might be nice. You've seemed a little tense lately." I raised an eyebrow, but he wasn't wrong. Even with the calm these nights brought, the remnants of the divorce still clung to me like snow melting slow and stubborn. "Tense," I echoed, half laughing. He chuckled softly. "You deserve to relax, Mom. Let me book one for you." "Oh, Ethan, you don't have to." "I want to." His voice was gentle, but sure. Before I could form another protest, he was already on his feet, speaking to the receptionist. When he returned, that familiar boyish grin was back. "All set," he said, then paused, rubbing the back of his neck. I booked one for myself, too." I shook my head, laughing. "Of course you did." The massage was heavenly, slow, deep pressure, unwinding tension I didn't know I was still holding. When I stepped back into the lounge afterward, I felt lighter, softer somehow. Ethan met me there, looking equally serene. "Well," he asked, leaning his head to the side. "Like I could float out of here." I admitted. His laugh was warm. "Good. That's the point." Later that evening, in one of the quieter steam rooms, he stretched out on the bench beside me, moving with the loose, unhurried ease of someone whose body had finally unclenched. I looked at him, at the calm in his features, the quiet contentment there. "You were right," I said softly. "That was exactly what I needed." "See," he said, grinning. "I know what's good for you." I nudged him with my elbow, though the warmth in my chest surprised me. "Maybe I should return the favor. Give you a massage sometime." He lifted his brows, the teasing fading into something warmer. "You offering?" I hesitated, though I didn't know why. "It's only fair," I said. Back home, the atmosphere felt different, gentle, but charged. Ethan lay face down on the couch, a towel draped beneath him, his shoulders bare. I worked my hands slowly across the lines of tension in his back. My touch was cautious at first, unsure, but the quiet sigh he released eased my hesitation. "Where'd you learn how to do this?" he mumbled into the pillow. "I didn't," I admitted, laughing under my breath. "I'm just guessing." "Well," he said, his voice low and warm, "your guessing is pretty good." Something in the way he said it, a softness and honesty, sent a small shiver along my spine. I focused on the steady rhythm of my hands instead, on the simple closeness of the moment. "Does this help?" I asked quietly. He turned his head just enough to meet my eyes. "Yeah," he said softly. "It helps a lot." The room felt still then, the kind of stillness that carries meaning. When I gently pulled my hands away, his gaze lingered, not questioning, just present. "Thank you," he murmured, sitting up slowly. "Really." The next week, the air between us felt charged in a way neither of us acknowledged aloud. It was there in the small pauses, in the way our eyes held a fraction longer than before, in the way my breath caught unexpectedly when he smiled. After our usual routine, we sat again in the lounge, wrapped in robes, cups warm in our hands. But this time, Ethan didn't move toward the receptionist's desk. "I think I'd rather have another one of your massages," he said casually, leaning back. I tried to mask the flutter in my chest. "Oh, is that so?" His gaze didn't waver. "You're better than the professionals anyway." I laughed, but the sound felt thin, too bright, as though it was trying to cover something I wasn't ready to name. "Flattery will get you everywhere, you know," I teased. Ethan's grin softened into something warmer, smaller. "Good," he murmured. "I'll remember that." That night, after I'd gone to bed and the house settled into its usual quiet, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I kept replaying the evening, not in sharp scenes, but in impressions. The sound of his laugh, the warmth in his eyes. The way the space between us seemed to shift just slightly closer each time we sat side by side in the steam. Something had changed, not in a sudden, dramatic way, but in that slow, unmistakable way the tide moves, inch by inch, reshaping the shoreline without being seen doing it. I didn't know what to do with that. But I did know one thing. I was looking forward to next Saturday more than I wanted to admit. The next week, I was running late. A work email had dragged out longer than expected, and I rushed downstairs, adjusting my coat as I went, only to stop short. Ethan was waiting by the front door, with flowers. My breath caught, not from surprise alone, but from the tenderness of it. The bouquet was simple but stunning, soft blush roses and tiny white lilies woven together with care. "Ethan," I said quietly, the words barely making it out. "What's this?" He shrugged, though there was a flush of something warm and shy beneath the gesture. "Just thought you deserve them. You've been amazing lately. I wanted to do something nice for you." My chest tightened. Not painfully, just full. "You didn't have to," I whispered, though my smile betrayed me. "But thank you. Really." "I wanted to," he repeated, soft, steady, and the way he held my gaze made something in me pulse deep and quiet. I set the flowers gently on the counter, and before I could think twice, I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. The embrace came so naturally, like it had been waiting to happen. He held me back immediately, firmly, warmly, his presence grounding in a way I hadn't felt from anyone in months. "Thank you," I murmured into his shoulder. "This means more than you know." His arms tightened around me, his cheek brushing mine, his voice low. "Anytime." He pressed a soft kiss to my cheek before stepping back. It lingered, not inappropriately, not misplaced, just heartfelt. We didn't speak of it. We didn't have to. At the mineral spa that evening, everything felt slightly different. Not louder, not dramatic, just closer. In the steam room, the air wrapped around us like a cocoon. When we moved through the cold plunge, the water felt warmer, as though my body was humming with something already. Later, in the lounge, sipping our tea in the dim light, Ethan reached out and let his fingers brush mine. A small touch. Barely anything. Except it felt like something. "You know," he said quietly, not looking away, "these Saturdays, they're the best part of my week." My breath caught. "They are?" I asked, though I already knew my answer. He nodded, gaze steady. "I know at first we kept it going just to hold on to something familiar. But now," he exhaled slowly, "now it's just important to me." I swallowed, my voice barely a whisper. "They're important to me too." Later, when we were getting ready to leave, most of the spa had emptied. The halls were dim and quiet, the night falling softly outside the tall windows. As I reached for my coat, Ethan touched my arm, lightly, like he was asking permission to speak without saying it. "Hey," he said, his voice gentle. "How are you really?" The question hit deeper than I expected. "I'm fine," I began, but even I could hear how thin the words were. Ethan didn't look away. "It's okay if you're not," he said quietly. "I just want you to know I'm here. Always." The sincerity in his voice, steady, patient, unwavering, broke something open in me. A lump rose in my throat, and I nodded, unable to speak. "Come here," he whispered. His arms wrapped around me again, warm and sure. His hand slid gently to the back of my head, fingers threading softly through my hair as he held me close. I let myself lean into him, my cheek against his chest, eyes closing. "You're amazing," he murmured, so quiet it felt like the words were meant for the space right between us. "I hope you know that." When he finally drew back, his hands rested lightly on my shoulders, his gaze meeting mine with a quiet intensity. He leaned in, pressing a kiss to my cheek, longer this time, warm enough to leave something glowing beneath my skin. "Good night, Mom," he said softly. His voice lingered in the air long after the words were gone. His voice was low and steady when he said goodnight, and I watched him walk toward his room, the soft sound of his footsteps fading down the hallway. My heart was pounding, as though something had shifted inside me, and I hadn't yet caught up to its movement. The lines between us had always been so clear, mother and son, steady and unquestionable. But now there was a softness to the edges. A quiet warmth that didn't fit neatly into the familiar shape of how things used to be. All week, the flowers on the kitchen counter seemed to watch me. Their pink petals stayed bright and open, unfurling slowly, as though blooming in slow motion. Each time I looked at them, I remembered the way Ethan had held them, the shy way he had offered them, the way his arms had wrapped around me, protective, sure, the way his lips had brushed my cheek, warm enough to linger long after the touch itself had passed. It had been innocent, simple, and yet it hadn't. As Saturday approached again, I felt something building inside me. Part anticipation, part unease, part something I didn't want to examine too closely. I wasn't afraid of seeing him. If anything, that was the part that felt most natural. It was the feeling beneath it that unsettled me. Something new. Something I didn't have a name for. When I came downstairs that afternoon, Ethan was already waiting by the door. His coat hung loosely over one arm, his hair slightly tousled from running his hand through it. There was something softer about him that day, something unguarded. He smiled when he saw me, and just like that, the tension I'd been carrying all morning eased without effort. "Ready?" he asked, his tone light, but his eyes holding something quieter, deeper, something that felt like it was meant just for me. I nodded, returning his smile as I reached for my bag. "Always." The word came out gentle, natural, as though it had always been the truth. He opened the door for me, stepping aside with that effortless courtesy he'd always had since he was young. The cold Boulder air greeted us, brisk and clean, carrying with it the faint scent of wood smoke from nearby chimneys. We walked to the car together, close enough that our arms brushed once, just lightly, but the touch stayed with me, warm as a hidden ember. I didn't know what the evening would hold. I didn't know how to name the shifting space between us. But I knew one thing, undeniably. I wanted to be there, with him, in that quiet warmth we had created together, where the world felt softened and the silence felt full instead of empty. And somehow, that was enough for now.